Hello and welcome to the Crypto Insider interview. I am Vlad, and today my guest is Pierre Rochard, who is one of the Bitcoin heroes of our days, and he's the lead developer of the Node Launcher, which is maybe the easiest way to onboard the Lightning Network nowadays. So, hello.
Hi, Vlad. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Well, I'm happy that I get to have you, and I've actually interviewed Hadalonaut about 2 months ago when he started the project with the Torch. And I know that he said that you are one of his heroes and one of the people that he looks up to.
He's one of my heroes.
Really?
Yeah, Lightning Trust Chain, I think, was a great idea, and it was fun to participate in. And I think that it had a huge impact. We saw Jack from Square take the torch, and that launched it into actual mainstream media. So I think that like it's going to be grassroots ideas about new applications for Lightning that are going to go viral. So, for example, last year we saw Satoshi's Place
Hmm.
from Lightning Koala. So, I think these things are going to emerge organically from the Bitcoin and Lightning community, and it was really awesome to see that with the Lightning Trust Chain.
As I recall, I think you have a degree in accounting or economics, and
Yeah,
somehow you ended up developing Bitcoin applications. How does that work?
yeah. So I think it makes sense, but others beg to differ. So I got my master's in accounting, and I started learning how to code after I graduated from college because I wanted to write Bitcoin accounting software. Because I'd learned about Bitcoin my last year of grad school with Michael Goldstein and Daniel Krawiss. And so I wanted to, it's funny, everyone who comes to Bitcoin, they come with a certain background. So if their background is medical, a medical background, they want to put healthcare records on the blockchain. If their background is real estate, then they want to put real estate on the blockchain. So everyone has different, whatever their background was, causes them to think about Bitcoin in a different way. And my background was accounting, but it was also that I'd been studying Austrian economics since I was a sophomore or junior in high school. So I was very much into sound money and free markets and libertarianism and all of this. And so when I saw Bitcoin, I saw it as kind of the ideal monetary policy. So I was very interested in how monetary policy causes the business cycle. And so that's kind of what got me interested in Bitcoin. And then with my accounting background, it was okay, how do I do accounting for Bitcoin? But there was no Bitcoin accounting software, so I started writing that, and then my career ended up just going in that direction. So I left the world of accounting and just became a software developer and learned all about Python and databases and C++ and object-oriented programming and all this stuff, which I still I find it fascinating, and I'm still learning a lot on the software development side. But I think that any software developer would be lying if they said that they they learned everything or if they knew everything. So anyway, when I wanted to create, so in the accounting world, people use Microsoft Excel all the time, and that's what they're most comfortable with. And same thing with the finance world. And my friend Nick Bhatia, he had been theorizing about the Lightning Network rate of return. And to me, the ideal way of a finance person collecting Lightning related data would be to have it import into Excel. And so I created an Excel plugin that allows you to connect to your Lightning node. The problem I ran into was the difficulty of running a Lightning node on Windows. You have to go in the command line and figure things out and use update update configuration files, text files and stuff. So it wasn't easy, and I wanted to create an easy solution. So I created the Node Launcher, which was basically a very small graphical user interface on top of Bitcoin and Lightning to be able to manage your nodes and get on the Lightning Network in the easiest manner possible. So I've been iterating on that. At first, it was just for myself, and then a lot of people wanted to use it, so I just take in feedback and have been improving it based on feedback I get. It still has a few bugs that I'm working out, but for the most part, it works really well for almost everyone.
Why do you think it's the easiest way of onboarding the Lightning Network, given the amount of money that gets poured into development? I mean, if you try to run C Lightning or LNZ, it's a lot more difficult than running the node launcher.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that I think software. My general philosophy with software is that it should be very specialized. So, like, that's kind of the Unix philosophy of like do one thing and do it well. So it makes sense to me that a like even Bitcoin, like I would argue that Bitcoin should not have a graphical user interface. I think it should just be Bitcoin D, and then other people build on top of Bitcoin D and integrate it into their own graphical user interface, so that essentially the developers of Bitcoin can be focused on the node as a participant in a peer-to-peer network that is enforcing consensus rules. Like that's what they should be focused on. They shouldn't be focused on uh, widgets and like how to make it like user friendly or like those kinds of things. Like that, those are different developers that should be worried about the user interface and how people actually interact with the node. Now there is like there is a point of intersection between those two, right? Where like but I think that the node developers should be thinking about, okay, how do we create a really nice API for the UI developers to query the node through the UI or through the API, rather than the node developers creating the UI themselves. So I think that it is okay that LND and C Lightning are only command line, and it's kind of on other developers, myself included. But you know, like the Lightning Joule Chrome extension or browser extension, and then the Zap desktop wallet, like all these different UI creators will iterate on different approaches of interacting with the node software. And then the node developers can be focused on protocol development and research, because there's just a lot of work to be done there.
Yeah, sounds about right. And if I recall correctly, when you mentioned the final stage of the node launcher, you said you wanted to turn it into some kind of dashboard where you get to see statistics about the network and facts about how many Lightning nodes are open and how many channels you can find.
Yeah, absolutely. So one interesting aspect of the node launcher is that it uses a UI framework that comes from the C++ world. It's called Qt, and this is a cross-platform UI. And it actually has built in like the ability to do like 3D graphics acceleration. So like you could create a video game inside of Qt, although I'd advise against it. There are better frameworks for creating video games. But what I was thinking is that with this graphics acceleration, that I can be able to do things that you wouldn't be able to do in JavaScript or in Electron, like where, for example, if you try to do the network graph of like the public Lightning network, if you try to do that in the browser, it takes up so much memory that it's actually like very slow and doesn't work very well. But I think I could actually build that into the node launcher and have it be pretty performant. Now, there's other like tools for advanced users that I want to add to the node launcher. So, for example, um, we saw recently the on-chain transaction fee rates go up significantly because there was a backlog in what's called the mempool, which holds transactions as they wait to be included in the next block or in future blocks. And so I want to create an interface where you can actually see what the mempool looks like and how it has evolved over time. Because currently you have to go to a website called Joho's mempool and rely on his data to see what the history of the mempool is, which is kind of silly when you are running a full node locally and you have all the data locally and you could just be querying that directly and not have to trust someone else's data. So that's something that I'd like to add is kind of a mempool explorer. And then also the ability to see where your transactions are in the mempool. So if you're opening a channel and you set it to 100 satoshis per byte, and you want to see like where you are in the pecking order for to get an estimate of when your transaction will be confirmed, that would be helpful as well. But that's more for advanced users. I think that novice users probably don't need that information, and they probably wouldn't necessarily understand it until they've learned more about the Bitcoin system. um, and it's funny, like people talk about like mainstream consumers and like all this stuff, like yeah, I get that they're important, but it's just way too early for them, and that we'll onboard them later. And right now I think that we should focus on onboarding the crypto natives, the people who actually do want to learn more about these systems and are not just looking for another payment system. Like they're not looking for a Venmo. Like they're actually interested in decentralization. And I get that it's kind of a niche, but with the internet, like a niche can be thousands of people. And so I do think that there is a niche of thousands of people who are interested in testing like Bitcoin and Lightning on the frontier, not just like as a mature product, which it is not yet, and it won't be for a while. So yeah.
I think adding mempool statistics to the node launcher would still be a good idea, even though there might be some people who don't really understand what's going on and what the purpose of that implementation is. It's still useful as an educational tool, as people will look at it and say, well, what is this? I should get informed and better understand why I pay higher fees when I try to open a channel in a faster amount of time. So I don't think there is any kind of information that anyone can add that is futile or not friendly to newbies. And in this regard, I have been critical of the Casa node because you cannot, in their dashboard, there is no way for you to set fees for anything, be them on-chain transactions or Lightning. There is no way for you to set fees. And I find that to be sketchy because you never know how much it costs you to send a transaction.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, they're trying to be user friendly, but I think that like it's just too early for that. And until fee estimators are excellent, which they are far from it, we should allow users to manually set their fee rate. And really, it's like, I don't know. I think that there's difficulty in Bitcoin between like trying to figure out, like there's a lot of people using Coinbase because it's very user friendly, and so Coinbase has like millions of users or whatever, and these people have just bought Bitcoins. And I think that's okay. Like we can leave them alone. We don't need to like entice them to or encourage them to use Bitcoin and Lightning today. Like it's just way too early for them. If they're curious about it and want to explore it, then they should. But I think that like maybe it's the case that that view is like incompatible with their business model. Like they're trying to encourage mass adoption by people using Raspberry Pis at home, and that's like their ideology. But I don't know how realistic it is. Like it seems as realistic to me as the like BitPay back in the day was like thinking that there would be mass adoption from merchants using BitPay. Like that's just you might get a few merchants and like there's marginal demand for it, but I think that right now we're in the speculative phase of Bitcoin. And so the businesses that are going to do well are the businesses that cater to that. So that's exchanges that have been like the most profitable businesses. And really, if you kind of look at investors in the space, like the only investments that have made money in Bitcoin terms that have kept up with Bitcoin's returns are the exchanges. Everything else has been a worse investment than just buying Bitcoin. So I think that'll continue to be the case until Bitcoin's adoption stabilizes and we've reached like a kind of an equilibrium point there. But I think we're very far from that.
Okay, so my next question is, why would you advise people to run their Bitcoin and Lightning nodes on their own computers through the node launcher, as opposed to buying a separate device like a Raspberry Pi to do this exact?
Yeah. So my first argument would be that it's faster because you don't have to wait for the shipping. Um, my second argument would be that it's less expensive because you don't have to pay for the Raspberry Pi. Um, And then my third argument would be that it's just easier. Like you just download the app and you open it. And I don't think that like anything like that's easier than plugging in a device. People are used to downloading apps and just opening it. Like it's as easy as Spotify or Chrome or whatever. So um, now the argument against the node launcher in my mind is that if you want to be a routing node and you want to be up 24/7, then it doesn't really like using it on your laptop or your desktop that you're putting to sleep or shutting down. Like that's not great. So you could like, in what I do is I keep my I have a laptop, an old laptop that I keep on 24/7, and that's been working fine as a routing node. I have a desktop that I shut down and open up, and like I don't use it as a routing node. So like the other thing is that you want to have reliable hardware. So now the new version of LND has what's called static channel backups. So that's going to allow you to, if your hardware fails, to be able to recover your channels if you're backing, because you're backing them up. But the problem is that in the channel recovery process, you have to close your channels. So if you're a routing node and you have like 100 channels open, that means that you've got to do 100 on-chain transactions to close all those channels. Which, if the transaction fees have gone up a lot, like that could be very expensive. It could be $5 per channel, in which case you're paying $500 in transaction fees to close them, and then you have to reopen them. So that it could cost you $1,000, and all because you were running unreliable hardware. So I would encourage people, if you want to be a routing node that has hundreds of channels open, you need to like throw away the Raspberry Pi, because that's not reliable hardware. You need to go and research this. And I wrote a Medium post that kind of highlights like what reliable hardware is. Already, like an old laptop is going to be more reliable than a Raspberry Pi in most cases. And by old, I don't mean like pre-2000. I mean like uh, so something like that. And then having RAID, I think, is important, where RAID is essentially where you plug in, like, let's say two USB hard drives or two USB SSDs is what I do to the laptop. And then you have them mirrored so that they have the same data on them. And so if one fails, then the other continues working, and you don't have to do the recovery process and close a bunch of channels. And the other thing is having a UPS. So that's not the shipping service, but uninterruptible power supply, I think, or is what it's called. But basically, it's a power supply that has a battery built into it. So if your electricity goes down, instead of your computer immediately shutting down. Now, you don't really need this for a laptop because the laptop has battery built into it. But if you have a desktop computer, or you want to have your laptop and have it continue running for hours on end after the power goes out, then, or the other thing too, plugging in your internet router to your UPS, because your internet could continue functioning despite your power going down. So like it's two different things. Like you could have your electricity cut off, but your cable continues working. And so you could actually keep your node online despite the power going out. And so all these things help with node reliability. And the other thing too is that if you have your power cut off suddenly, it could cause data corruption and force you into a recovery situation. So I think UPS is important, RAID is important, and then the other third part is, and this is probably for a little more advanced users, but I think that if you have like 1,000 channels open, like you definitely should think about investing in this, is ECC RAM. So generally ECC RAM is for servers. And like I would recommend looking into like workstations and servers that are kind of like enterprise grade hardware, where investing in this kind of hardware would be less expensive than you having to force close channels and reopen them if you've got 1,000 channels open. But basically, and also like you can buy this stuff used for like less than $500. So I think that, if you compare the cost of a used workstation that has ECC RAM versus a new like Raspberry Pi or whatever, like it's actually pretty competitive. And ECCRAM, it stands for Error Correction Code, I think is what the acronym is. And that is just a lot more reliable than your general commercial grade RAM. So anyway, I have a Medium post written on this, and I recommend people who are interested in running a Lightning routing node 24/7 with a lot of channels open to really think about their hardware and to invest in that so that they're not in a situation where they have to pay through the nose for on-chain transaction fees because they were trying to be cheap with a Raspberry Pi.
What about users who only keep their nodes open when they know that they would receive a payment? How does it work to manage the channels to make sure that they can keep them open and have this in a convenient way that they don't have to permanently run their nodes?
Yeah, so I think that's challenging because one of the constraints is that if I close my laptop for a week and then I open it back up, it has to catch up with the blocks that happened during that week. So that's like 144 times 7, and it's a lot. And like my laptop will, the fan will turn on, like it's going 100% on the CPU, and it's catch. So like the Lightning node has to wait for the blocks to catch up on the Bitcoin node. So that's kind of challenging in that regard. And it's not even the case that well, we can talk about like Neutrino and Bitcoin 57, where like using LND or Lightning with a light client, like that doesn't help you either, because the way that like the LND is engineered, you can't switch back and forth between a full node and using BIP 157. So hopefully that gets fixed. But if it doesn't, then I'll fix it. But in the meantime, like that means that you do have to wait for your Bitcoin node to catch up. So I don't think that there's a great solution there for users. I would just recommend that like you set the node launcher up to turn on when you boot up. That way it's like a startup item or whatever. And so it's always kind of on in the background. And then when you need to send or receive a payment, it's just ready to go right there.
Well, what about the times when, let's say, you go away for a week or something? Are your channels going to close in that meantime?
Oh, yeah. So that's a great question. So that's really depends on the people that you opened a channel with. So if you opened a channel like with a peer that's trying to like limit the number of channels they have open, and you're offline for too long, like they'll force close the channel on you. And so I think that what we're going to need to see is um, services built on top of Lightning nodes, where basically so I don't have this set up on lightningpowerusers.com yet, but I'd like to add it eventually, where if you open a channel with us, you can lock in a guarantee that I won't close the channel, and for however long, for a year or whatever. That way you maintain the reliability. But practically speaking, like I don't know, we haven't gathered the data yet to see like how many people force close channels that aren't getting used. So yeah, you do have to be online, but even if you're online, that doesn't mean that someone's not going to close the channel on you. At any point, your peers can close channels, and you can't force someone to keep a channel open with you. So yeah, that's definitely an issue, and I think that we'll have to see people who are running routing nodes provide like services on top of Lightning where they say like, okay, we won't close the channel on you, and that's like a relationship you have with the node.
Could you please tell me more information about BIP 157 and 158? I recall you had a long discussion with people like Giacomo Zucco and also Udi Wertheimer, and it was also Nicolas Dorier, and they were
Yeah.
strongly against it. But all I could understand was that the fact that a light client would be available for everyone to use, then they would be disincentivized to run their own full nodes. And I guess that was their criticism.
Yeah, so and that's a valid criticism, and we saw with the governance issues in 2017 that running a full node is very important. And we should definitely be making that as easy as possible for people. So to the extent that light clients and light client technology like BIP157 disincentivize the running of full nodes, like they are problematic. Now, my argument is that we can use light clients in a strategic manner, where essentially when the user opens the node launcher, it uses BIP157 to immediately onboard the user onto Lightning in a matter of seconds. That way, they don't go and use a custodial Lightning wallet online. Um, and at the same time, they get onboarded onto Lightning, and their full node also starts syncing. So the full node syncing can take anywhere from like 6 hours to 2 weeks. So once the full node is done syncing, then we turn off BIP157 and we switch the user over to using the full node. And all of this happens automatically in the background. So from my perspective, if we use light client technology in a strategic manner like that, then we can actually have more full nodes over the long term and have more decentralization and more trustlessness and just a better Bitcoin network and a better onboarding experience simultaneously.
If I recall correctly, Wasabi Wallet also has something similar in which in the beginning you just use the light client, and when you run your own full node, it automatically gets connected to it.
Yeah. So there's like a lot of different ways of doing this. I think that people are concerned about situations where we're using BIP157 light client technology, and we're doing that when we could be using a full node. So, like, for example, I think this is a problem with like the Zap desktop app, where if you if you open up the Zap desktop app, you can use BIP157 technology and use your Lightning wallet on your desktop, and then you never run a full node. So, to me, that's a missed opportunity because the person could hypothetically run a full node if Zap was just engineered to do it like the node launcher is doing. But they're not taking that route. And so when there's governance issues, or if there's ever a problem with like the miners being compromised or whatever, like, and they have the longest chain and they're changing the consensus rules, and BIP157 is not checking for that, like, it's a problem. So I don't know if it's going to be an issue in practice, but I think that as a best, if we're trying to do this the best way possible, like, we can engineer things so that the user is using Bitcoin how it should be used, not how we think it should be used. And so I think that I think that the other issue is on mobile, where there's no way that anyone can run a full node on mobile. Or is there? Like, I think that people have they have theories about like what a mobile wallet or what a mobile device is capable of, but in practice, like, there are lots of mobile devices that could run a full node on them, and so we need to think really rigorously about that. And then the other issue is maybe it's better if your mobile device connects to your home node. So if you're running a node at home, then you can just rely on that rather than trying to use BIP157 on your mobile device. So there's like lots of different ways of thinking about these issues. And I think people are like jumping to like what they think makes most sense. And rather than like critically evaluating every option and like thinking strategically about it.
So, in hindsight, what gets you most excited about Bitcoin these days? And what is the most exciting project that you currently work on and you believe is quite the future of both Bitcoin and Lightning?
Yeah. So I think I'm most excited about people earning Bitcoins using the Lightning Network as a way of receiving payments. And so in that regard, like, the project I'm most excited about is BTC Pay Server. Now, I'm not directly involved with BTC Pay Server, because I'm kind of looking at it from the opposite direction of the consumer, and the consumer having a Lightning wallet and being able to use Lightning and spend it with a BTC Pay server merchant. So like I think that I think that's the most exciting project. Just to generally the use case of people receiving and spending satoshis on Lightning using a trustless setup, a self-sovereign setup, so that they're not having to rely on third parties.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. You have a fair point there. But I have a last question, I guess, because we have been running for almost 30 minutes, and I'm not sure how many people will be listening all the way to the end. But what's next? What do you believe is next for Bitcoin? We have a second layer scaling solution. We have many challenges in regards to it, but do you think that Schnorr or maybe a third layer is coming along to change the rules of the game?
So Schnorr is definitely coming along, and we will see the code in this year. I don't know that it'll be deployed this year, but I definitely I've heard some interesting things about it, and good things. And I think that Schnorr is Schnorr is an incremental improvement, but we also we'll see in practice how incremental it is versus how revolutionary it is. So it might surprise us. And I think that, my number one thing right now is I think that people are, uh, their expectations are too low, and they are not bullish enough and excited enough about Bitcoin and Lightning. So it seems funny to say that, because like we do see people who have very high expectations and are very excited about it, but I still think that they're going to have their expectations exceeded. And I think that like it's a combination of a million different little improvements that is just going to make it so that using Bitcoin and Lightning to send payments around is just very frictionless and very fun. And that's going to coincide with this increasing, like, obviously people talk about how, oh, we don't care about the price, we just care about the technology and all this. Like I think that's horse shit. I think everyone cares about the price. I think that the price actually is very important, because the price is an indication of how liquid Bitcoin is, and the liquidity of a money is its number one like functionality, its number one usefulness is how liquid a money is. And so the higher the price, the more liquid a Satoshi is, and that's really important. Now, I think that what we're seeing is that the bear market seems to be, maybe it's not over, maybe we've got another leg down, but at the very least, the worst seems to be behind us. I think we'll see, but the excitement is definitely still in Bitcoin, and I think that we're going to see another bull market within the next couple, maybe 3 years. And that's going to coincide with a lot of enthusiasm about this layer 2 Lightning scaling solution. And I don't know. Well, I think that we'll see more mainstream adoption, quote unquote. Like we've seen glimmers of it, but we'll have probably, like, what I want to see is a killer app on Lightning that will be unpredictable. Like we can't know what it's going to be today. So like I could try to guess what it'll be, but it would be like someone in the 1900s like trying to guess what the future will be like, oh, flying cars. Like, no, it turns out we'll have driverless cars, not flying cars. Like people were dreaming of flying cars that you drive, which, like, no, that's not what we're getting. We're getting cars on the ground that you don't drive. So like me trying to guess what the future holds for Bitcoin and Lightning, I feel like it's the same way as someone trying to guess that. But in any case, like I think that we'll be very happy about the results, because I think that the engineering fundamentals are fantastic.
So, at which events will we be seeing you in the future, doing presentations and stuff?
Yeah, so I'm going to be at Consensus like that whole week of Blockchain Week. So the weekend before, I'm going to be doing a Lightning workshop on both Saturday and Sunday. On Saturday, it's more focused on programming. So people who are beginner programmers or intermediate programmers who want to learn about how to interact with Lightning and how to interact with the LND API. So that'll be on Saturday. And then on Sunday, it'll be for people, whether they're programmers or not, who want to be able to interact with Lightning and send a payment, open a channel, learn about how that all functions. So I'm very excited about that. That's going to be a lot of fun. And then during the blockchain week at Consensus, I'll be speaking about the node launcher and participating there. And afterwards, in June, I'll be going to San Francisco for the Bitcoin 2019 conference organized by Bitcoin Magazine. So I'll be actually flying into LA and then going on a bus with a bunch of altcoiners. It's like a crypto bus. We're going to drive for 8 hours from LA to San Francisco. And I'll either want to kill myself after that, or we'll have a lot of fun and I'll be able to spread the good word about how awesome Bitcoin is and how awesome Lightning is, and maybe some altcoiners will change their minds or moderate their criticisms of Bitcoin. We'll see. And yeah, let's. Oh, sorry. Before Blockchain Week, that weekend on Saturday evening, I'll be hosting a steak dinner. So reach out if you want to come to the steak dinner for that. And then in August, I'll be at the Block Boom conference in Dallas, and that's hosted by my good friend Gary Leland. And we're going to be hosting the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute annual dinner there as well. Last year we had 82 people come. It was the most fun party I've ever been to. So definitely go check that out. Reach out to Michael Goldstein. He's the one organizing the Nakamoto Institute steak dinner, and he'll get you the details on that. And then in there's other conferences later in the year, but I'll brief people on those later. Three's already too many.
Okay,
Oh, sorry. One I should mention though is Baltic Honey Badger in Riga, which I think is in September, and that's a really popular conference. And I'll be talking about the node launcher there.
let me tell you, it's so good to see someone who is so enthusiastic and happy and excited about everything that concerns Bitcoin and Lightning. Usually, when I speak to people, they seem to have that pessimistic side when they say, okay, this might not work, but at least we have a very decentralized first layer. But with you, it's always like, okay, I'm working on this and it's so great, and you're going to see just how much potential this has, and we're going to onboard a lot of people.
Yeah, so I was like that, kind of the skeptical, cynical view before I did the 1 week Chain Code Labs residency about Lightning. But the more I dug into it, the clearer it was to me that Lightning actually, I think it is a silver bullet solution, and it makes a lot of sense from an engineering perspective. And there's just all the problems that people talk about Lightning today, I know they are solvable. They're not unsolvable problems. It's just a matter of engineering work to go into it and improve it. And so I think the Lightning Network is going to evolve into a fantastic, scale-free network that just works. And the problems we'll have are going to be about increasing the block weight limit on the base layer. We'll have to do that eventually, but I'll leave that controversy for later.
Okay, so thank you very much, Pierre Rochard. This was a really great interview, and I'm happy that we finally got to speak. And I wish you all the best with the node launcher. Personally, I think I will try it and review it for Crypto Insider. I
Awesome.
am currently running the full node, but I haven't tried any Lightning implementations. I did experiment with the Raspberry Pi stuff, but it was disappointing from my point of view.
Yeah. What operating system are you on?
I'm on a Mac.
Okay, so the node launcher should work pretty flawlessly on Mac. I have had some bugs on Windows that I'm currently working out, but yeah, give it a shot. The node launcher, if you have Bitcoin already running on your Mac, and all you have to do is quit Bitcoin and then open the node launcher, and the node launcher will actually use the Bitcoin data that you already synced. And if it does not, then there's a bug, and let me know, and I'll look at how to fix that.
Awesome. So I'll talk to you later. Thank you very much for this.
Sounds good. Thanks. Bye.